Hey guys, I'm Mr. Hark. Today, I didn't come to tell a Bigfoot story. I came because my daughter died on my property and the only witness was a trail camera I put up years ago. I've replayed that footage more times than I can admit. There's a moment, just a beat, where it steps out of the rain, sees what she's wearing, and something in it changes. Like recognition, like a decision. And if you're about to ask the obvious question, why her, why my daughter, I'm telling you now, the answer is the reason I'm finally talking. Stay with me to the end, because what happened out there isn't just a story, it's a warning. If you want more real accounts like this, make sure to like and subscribe. Alright, let's begin. I live in a cabin outside a small town in western Washington where most folks would drive past without noticing. If you've been out there, you know the kind of town. One main road, 2 gas stations, a diner that closes early, a hardware store that sells chainsaws and coffee in the same aisle, logging trucks, old men in ball caps who don't look up much, a sheriff's substation that's half empty because they can't keep staff. My cabin sits off a gravel road that turns into a worse gravel road, and then into something that isn't really a road at all. A couple of ruts and a hump down the middle. In the wet months, it turns to mud, and if you don't have the right tires, you don't go. I chose that on purpose. I used to work wildlife enforcement. People call it different things. Ranger, warden, officer. It depends on what agency you're with. Mostly, it meant I spent my days in the woods dealing with the parts of people that come out when they think nobody's watching. Poaching, trespassing, drunk hunters, injured animals, domestic fights at campsites, missing hikers. And sometimes it meant I was the one who had to tell a family their kid didn't come home. I never thought I'd be that family. I wasn't always alone out there. I had a wife, Mary, and we had a daughter, Isla. If you saw a photo of my daughter, you'd probably think she was older than she was. She had that look, focused eyes, like she'd already decided what she was doing with her life and she didn't have time for nonsense. She was 20 when she died, a film student. Documentary track, she said, like that was a separate species of film. She carried a camera like some people carry a purse. It was always there, always charged. She wanted to make something real. She used to tell me when she was a teenager that she didn't want to make stuff up. She wanted to record what was already there and make people look at it. I should have been careful what I wished for, because she came to my cabin on a break from school with a plan in her head. She told me it was for a short project, a little documentary piece, nothing big. She said, "I want to interview you." I laughed like it was cute, like she was playing adult. But she didn't smile back. She just looked at me for a beat and said, "I want to tell the story of the man who disappeared into the woods after my mom died." That was the first time in years I felt my stomach drop in a clean way. Like my body recognized danger before my brain did. I told her, "I didn't disappear. I'm right here." And she said, "You know what I mean." She came in late fall. That time of year where the rain isn't a storm, it's just the air. Everything is wet. The trees are dark. The daylight feels thin. It gets dark early. It stays dark late. And when it does rain hard, it doesn't just rain. It lays down on you. That day she arrived, it was cold enough I could see her breath when she stepped out of her car. She was wearing this jacket that looked too nice for my porch, and her boots were clean. She looked out of place in the best way. Like a bright thing in a dim room, she ran up and hugged me hard. She smelled like shampoo and fabric softener. It hit me like something I hadn't realized I'd been missing. Home. A normal house. Then she stepped back and looked past me at the trees like she could already feel the place. And the first thing she said after hi wasn't about the cabin or the drive or even food. It was, "Why do you have cameras?" I followed her eyes. I had 2 trail cams up. One pointed at the porch and the driveway. One angled toward the tree line where it opened into a narrow gap between 2 big firs. There was another one farther out, but you couldn't see that from the porch. That one was hidden higher, angled down, where the deer trail ran along the ridge. Ayla walked right up to the one by the porch and leaned in, like she was reading a label. "They're trail cameras," I said, like that was the end of it. She touched the housing with her finger, and I felt a flash of irritation I didn't like. Not anger at her. Fear. The kind of fear that makes you sharp. "For wildlife?" she asked. "Yeah," I said. She looked at me, not at the camera. At me. like she was checking my face for the truth. "You got bears on these?" she said, half teasing. "Sometimes." "Cougars?" she asked. And she was smiling now, but it was thin. "Not often." She tilted her head and said, "So what are you watching for?" I should have lied smoother. I used to be good at that. But the truth is, I'd been living alone a long time, and there's a way your social muscles rot. You forget how to pretend. So I shrugged and said, "Just stuff." She gave me that look again. The one she had when she was a kid, and she knew I was holding something back. And then she brightened like a switch flipped and said, "Good. That's production value. This place already looks like a movie." She pulled her camera from her bag and just started filming, not even aiming at anything specific at first. My porch boards, the rust on a nail, a drop of rain hitting the edge of a bucket, the way my breath fogged when I laughed. She narrated while she filmed, like she couldn't help it. "Remote cabin, Western Washington," she said. "Dad lives out here alone. He used to work wildlife enforcement. He doesn't talk about Mom." I said her name too fast. "Ayla." She panned the camera up to my face and smiled sweetly. "What?" she said. "It's true. That first night, we ate at my little table that wobbles if you lean on it. The cabin smells like wood smoke and damp clothes. There's always a faint mildew smell no matter how much you scrub. That's just the forest. It creeps into everything. I made chili, the kind you make when you don't want to think. A pot, beans, meat, whatever's in the cupboard." She ate like she hadn't had a real meal in weeks, and that should have made me happy, but I kept watching the windows. I caught myself doing it, and I hated that she saw. She said, "You're jumpy. I'm fine. You keep looking outside," she said, "like you're waiting for someone." "Nobody comes out here," I said. She didn't push it right away. That's the thing about her. She could be gentle when she wanted. She could also be relentless. After dinner, she asked if she could film some interview stuff the next day. Just me talking about work, about the woods, about living out there, about Mom, if I was okay with it. I said, "We'll see." She rolled her eyes and said, "That means no." "It means we'll see," I repeated. She went to bed in the back room, the one that used to be hers when she was little. It's small, a twin bed, a dresser, a shelf with some old books she never took. I'd kept it more or less the same, like a museum. Like if I kept it ready, she might come back and everything would rewind. That night, after I heard her settle, I sat in the living room with the lamp off and just listened. Not in a dramatic way, in a habit way. Rain ticked against the window. The stove popped as it cooled. Somewhere out in the trees, a branch creaked. I got up and checked the trail cam app on my phone. I had a receiver inside that pulled from the porch cam. Not everything, not live. Just enough that I could see if something set it off. Nothing. I should have felt relief. Instead, I felt worse. Because when you live like that a long time, nothing starts to feel like it's building towards something. At some point late, I heard Ayla's door open. Soft, careful. Then her footsteps in the hallway. I didn't move. I stayed in the dark like a teenager pretending to be asleep. She came into the living room with her camera and a small light, not a bright one. A little panel light. She didn't see me at first because the lamp was off. Then she did. She froze. "Jesus," she whispered. "Couldn't sleep," I said. She swallowed and laughed quietly, like she was embarrassed. "I'm doing a video diary," she said, "for the project. Just private thoughts." She nodded toward the lens like she was already in her own head. I said, "You don't have to do that." "I know," she said. "I want to." She hesitated, then asked, "Can you not listen?" I should have said yes. I should have gone to bed. I should have given her privacy. Instead, I sat there and I said, "I'm not listening," which was a lie because I did. I couldn't help it. Her voice was low, but the cabin is small, and the walls are thin, and the night makes everything louder. She spoke into the camera like she was talking to a friend. "My dad is scared," she said, "but not of bears." I remember those words because they made me cold. Not because she was wrong. Because she was right, and she didn't even know how right. The next day, she got up early. College kids can do that when they have a project. They run on adrenaline. She made coffee in my old machine, like she'd done it her whole life, and she started filming again right away. She filmed the way the fog sat between the trees. She filmed the moss on the roof. She filmed the trail cameras. She kept trying to get me on camera, not in an aggressive way, more like she was sneaking up on a skittish animal. "Tell me about your job," she said, holding the camera but not pointing it directly at me yet. I was splitting kindling. I said, "It was a job. Come on," she said. "Like, why did you do it?" I shrugged. "Dad," I said, "because I like being outside, and I like the idea of keeping things fair. People think they can take whatever they want out here because nobody's watching." She nodded like she liked that line, like she could use it. Then she asked, "Do you miss it?" I paused too long. She saw that. I said, "Sometimes." She waited, and when I didn't add anything, she let it go. For then, after breakfast, she asked if she could get B-roll inside. Shots of the cabin, old photos, stuff that showed your life. I said yes because saying no would have been a confession all by itself, and because I didn't think she'd find what she found. The cabin has a storage room off the kitchen. It's basically a closet that got bigger over time. Boxes, tools, old clothes. A tote of Christmas stuff I never use. A bunch of Mary's things I couldn't throw out. I kept one tote sealed tight. Not taped, not locked. Just sealed. Like I'd made a mental rule, don't open it and the past stays asleep. Ayla opened it while I was outside fixing the gutter. I know because when I came in, I heard the sound of plastic on plastic, like a lid scraping, and I felt the hair lift on my arms. She was sitting on the floor with the tote open in front of her like she'd found treasure. "Dad," she said, and her voice had changed. I set my tools down slowly. "What are you doing?" She looked up, and I saw Mary's scarf in her lap. The one with the little pattern on it. Mary wore it when it was cold. She wore it until the fabric thinned. Isla started, then stopped because she realized how it sounded. I stepped forward, and I saw other things in the tote. A sweater, a photo album, a small tin box, and something else. Something that didn't belong. It was small, hand-sized, made of braided plant fiber and old leather strips, tied in knots that didn't look like the kind you learn in Scouts or from YouTube. There was a little hard piece tied into it, like a tooth, not polished like jewelry, just there, kept. Ayla held it up like it was delicate. "What is this?" she asked. My mouth went dry so fast it hurt. "That's nothing," I said. She frowned. "It's not nothing. It's like a charm." "Put it back," I said. My voice came out too hard. She blinked. "Why?" "Just put it back." She held it closer to her face, inspecting the knots. "Mom made this?" "No," I said. "Then who did?" I didn't answer. She looked at me for a long second, and I saw her brain doing math. Mary's tote. Strange object. My reaction. Her eyebrows lifted slowly. "Oh my God," she said. "Is this like some affair thing? Like..." "No," I snapped. And it was a mistake because it told her she was close to something, just not that. She stared at me and the air between us got thick. "What happened to Mom?" she said quietly. I had rehearsed that question in my head for years, like a soldier rehearses an ambush. I had a script ready, a safe version. It was an accident. She didn't move. "What kind of accident?" "She got attacked," I said, and I hated myself even as I said it. "By what?" she asked. I swallowed. "An animal." "What animal?" she pressed. I couldn't say it, so I did what I always do. I avoided. I looked past her and said, "You hungry? I can make something." Her face changed, a flash of anger. Hurt. Then she smoothed it out like she was learning how to be an adult. "Dad," she said, and her voice was careful now. "You can't just do that. You can't just shut down." I shrugged like I didn't care, like I wasn't about to come apart. "Put it back," I said again. She did, but she didn't look away from me while she did it, like she was memorizing my reaction. Later that day, I saw her near the tote again. Quick, like she thought I wasn't watching. She took the charm. She slipped it into her jacket pocket. I saw it and I didn't say anything. I want you to understand that. I saw it and I still didn't say anything, because part of me wanted it gone. And part of me, and this is hard to say, part of me thought, stupidly, that maybe nothing would happen. That maybe the rule I'd built my life around was superstition. The next day she wanted to go out and get forest footage. Establishing shots, she called it. Trees, trails, the cabin from a distance, that kind of thing. I told her, "Stay close." She laughed. Dad, I'm not 5. Stay close, I repeated. She rolled her eyes and went anyway. Not far. A loop around the cabin where the ground dips toward the creek. I watched her disappear between the trunks, her jacket bright against the dark woods. I stood on the porch longer than I needed, listening. The woods were wet, but not loud yet, just a light drizzle. Everything smelled like cedar and soil. I remember thinking, this is how you die. Not in a dramatic way, in a normal way. One day you watch your kid walk in the trees and you don't know it's the last time. She came back with damp hair and a grin, talking about shots she got. She held her camera up and played me a clip of water running over rocks. Look at the light, she said. It's like green. I nodded like I was paying attention. Then I saw it. The charm. It was in her hand. She was fidgeting with it while she talked, like it was a stress toy, like it meant nothing. My chest tightened. Ayla, I said. She looked down at her hand and then back up, like she'd forgotten. Oh, she said, casual. This thing. I was going to ask you again. I stepped toward her fast enough she flinched. Where did you get that? I said. She lifted her chin, defensive. From Mom's tote. You weren't going to tell me about it, so my hand went out before I decided. I grabbed it. The leather was old and slick. The plant fibers were rough and swollen with moisture. I felt like I'd touched a live wire. I held it in my fist, and for a second I couldn't breathe. She stared at me. Dad, you're freaking me out. I tried to make my face normal. I couldn't. You don't take that outside, I said. My voice shook. Ever, she blinked. Why? Because, I said, and I realized I didn't have a sentence ready. I had a rule, not an explanation. She laughed, but it wasn't amused now. It was nervous. Is this like cursed? She said. I stared at her and didn't answer, and that was answer enough. She stepped closer, lowering her voice like we were sharing a secret. Is this why you have cameras? She asked. I looked past her to the trees. I said, go inside. She hesitated. Dad, go inside. She went. But she went slowly, like she didn't want to, like she wanted to keep eyes on me, like she didn't trust me alone on the porch. That night, the rain came in hard. Not a gentle drizzle, not normal wet, a sheet. Loud enough that when it hit the roof, it turned into a constant roar. Wind pushed it sideways. It came under the porch roof and blew in cold. I kept checking the cameras. One was fine. The porch cam still caught movement if something crossed close. The one aimed at the tree line, it was harder. Rain triggers them. Leaves move. Missed false hits. Still, I watched. Ayla kept trying to get me to talk. She set up her camera on the table and pointed it at me like it was a polite weapon. She asked questions in that calm voice she used when she was trying not to show frustration. Tell me about Mom, she said. I stared at my coffee. I don't remember much, I lied. You do, she said quietly. You just don't want to. I rubbed my hands together, and they were cold even inside. She said, why did you leave your job? I retired, I said. You didn't retire, she said. You were 40. You don't retire from that. I looked at her then, and I saw her. Not a kid. A grown woman. A person who could see me. It made me angry, not at her. At the fact that I couldn't hide behind she's too young anymore. I don't want to do this, I said. It's just talking, she said. I'm not trying to hurt you. I wanted to laugh. Not because it was funny, because she had no idea. Outside, at some point, the woods went quiet. People who don't spend time in forests think it's always quiet. Real woods have a lot of small life. Even in rain, even at night. You hear little movements. When it goes quiet, you notice. It's like when a room full of people suddenly stops talking. Ayla went to the porch door and cracked it open to look out. What are you doing? I said too fast. She glanced back. I thought I heard something. The rain was so loud I don't know how she thought she heard anything, but she did. Maybe it was instinct. She stepped onto the porch in her socks like she always did at home. Like my porch was a living room. Get back inside, I said. She turned, and I saw something in her hand. The charm. My heart stuttered. Ayla, I said, and my voice came out like a warning. She held it up. I'm just looking, she whispered. I just want to see if you're... I crossed the room and grabbed her arm and pulled her back inside hard enough she stumbled. What is wrong with you? She hissed. I slammed the door and locked it, then I locked the deadbolt. Then I checked the window latches like that would save us. Ayla stood there staring at me like I'd lost my mind. "You're acting like someone's out there," she said. I swallowed. I said, "There's nothing out there." And she said, "Then why are you doing this?" I didn't answer, because I couldn't. That night, the first camera failed. The one on the porch kept sending normal false triggers. Rain, a branch, a shadow. Then, around 1 in the morning, the tree-line camera feed went black. Not a dead battery, not a glitch. Just black, like the lens was covered. I stared at my phone. I refreshed. I tapped. Nothing. Ayla was asleep in the back room. I could hear her breathing through the thin wall. I went to the window and looked out. Rain made everything a gray blur. The porch light cast a cone of yellow and the rest was dark. I told myself again and again, it's a branch. It's water. It's a malfunction. But I knew what it was, the same way you know when someone is standing behind you even before you turn. I didn't wake her. I sat in my chair with my boots on and the shotgun across my knees, and I listened to the rain. At some point, maybe an hour later, the porch cam pinged. Motion detected. I looked. The clip was short. The porch light flared off the rain. Something moved through frame, close to the camera, too close to be clear. A blur, and then gone. I replayed it. It wasn't a deer. It wasn't a raccoon. The shape was tall, upright, passing the edge of the porch like it owned it. I felt my mouth go numb. Then the porch camera went black too, just like the other one. One, then the other. Like whoever was out there knew what order to do it in. In the morning, the rain still hammered down. The yard was a mess of puddles. The creek sounded louder. The wind had thrown branches onto the driveway. I went outside with my hood up and my gloves on. The cold rain hit my face like needles. The tree-line camera was still mounted, but the lens was smeared, not with mud, with something oily and dark, like a hand had wiped across it. The porch camera was worse. The entire mount was twisted. The strap was torn clean. The housing was cracked, not chewed, not broken like an animal attacked it. Twisted, like somebody grabbed it and turned it until plastic gave up. The tree bark around it had gouges in it, deep grooves, fresh and pale under the wet, like claws or fingers dug in hard. I stood there with rain running down my sleeves, and I felt the old memory rise up like it had been waiting. I heard the back door open. Ayla stepped onto the porch with her coffee. She saw my face and stopped. "What happened?" she asked. I held the broken camera in my hand like evidence. She walked down the steps and leaned close. "Someone did that?" she said, incredulous. "I don't know," I lied. She straightened and looked at the tree line, the gap between the firs. "It looks like hands," she whispered. I snapped, "Don't say that." She looked at me like I'd slapped her. "What is going on?" she said, louder now. "This is not normal." I wanted to tell her. I wanted to sit her down and say, "Here's the truth. Here's what your mother did. Here's what I did. Here's what I stole. Here's what I've been living with." But my mouth stayed shut. Instead, I did what I always do. I went practical. "Storm's getting worse," I said. "We might lose power. I need to get the generator running." "We already have power," she said. "Not for long," I said. She stared at me. "You're avoiding," she said flatly. I looked at the broken camera again and said, "Go inside." She didn't. She stepped toward me, and for the first time she pointed her camera right at my face like she meant it. "Tell me the truth," she said. Her voice shook, but she held it steady. "Tell me what happened to Mom." Rain ran off the brim of my hood. My hands were cold. I said, "Not out here." "Then inside," she said. I didn't move. She said, "Dad, you keep acting like you're waiting for something. Like you're..." And then she stopped because she saw something on the ground near the porch. A bundle. It hadn't been there the night before. Not that I'd noticed. It was moss and sticks and small bones arranged in a rough shape. Not pretty. Not artistic. Just placed. Like someone had set it down carefully and stepped back. Ayla crouched. "What is that?" she whispered. I grabbed her shoulder and pulled her up. "Don't touch it," I said. She looked at me, eyes wide. "You know what it is," she said. I swallowed so hard it hurt. I said, "Go inside." She did, but she kept looking back like she didn't want to turn her back on the porch. Inside, the cabin felt smaller. The rain made it darker. The windows were streaked. The light was gray. Ayla set her camera on the table and leaned on her hands like she was bracing herself. "I found that charm," she said. You freaked out. "Cameras got destroyed. Now there's that thing on the porch. You telling me not to touch things, not to go outside, not to say words." She exhaled through her nose like she was trying not to cry. "Dad," she said softer, "what happened to Mom?" I stared at the stove. "It's my fault," I said. Her eyes snapped up. "What?" I didn't mean to say it. It just came out. Like my body was tired of carrying it. "It's my fault," I repeated, and my voice sounded wrong. Thin. Ayla's mouth opened, then closed. She looked like she didn't know what to do with that. "What do you mean?" she asked. "How is it your fault?" I shook my head. I couldn't go further. She stood up suddenly, chair scraping. "No," she said. "No. You can't do that. You can't drop that and then shut down." I held my hands up like I was stopping traffic. "I can't," I said. "You can," she snapped. "You just won't." She walked toward the back room like she was going to grab her stuff and leave. Then she stopped and turned back. "Is Mom's death not an accident?" she asked. I didn't answer. Her face changed. Something broke. "Oh my God," she whispered. The rain hit the roof so hard it sounded like static. She said, "You've been lying to me." I tried to speak. Nothing came. "I need to breathe," she said. "I need to think." "Ayla." She grabbed her jacket from the hook. She shoved her boots on without sitting down. Angry movements, and then she paused. She reached into her pocket. The charm. I felt my heart slam. "No," I said, and my voice came out like a bark. "No, don't." She looked at it like it was a key. "I'm not a kid," she said, and her eyes were wet. "I deserve to know." She lifted it and looped it around her wrist like a bracelet, not because it looked good, because she wanted to force the truth into the open. I stepped forward. She backed away. "Don't take that outside," I said again, and my voice cracked. "Then tell me why," she said. I stared at her. I tried to form the sentence. "Because it calls something. Because it's not yours. Because it will recognize it. Because I stole it. Because your mother." But the words jammed, and in that second she made a decision like young people do. Emotional. Like she was calling my bluff. She said, "I'm just going to hang the laundry. I'm not going into the woods." "You don't understand," I said. "I understand you're lying," she snapped. The power flickered then. A blink. The lights dimmed and came back. Ayla flinched. "See?" I said. "Generator." She hesitated, and I saw the tiniest crack in her anger. Fear peeking through. I used that. "I'm going to get it going," I said quickly. "I'll be right back. Stay inside." She stared at me, and she looked like she wanted to say no just to prove she could. Then she said, "Fine." I grabbed my jacket, my tools, and I went out into the rain. The generator shed sits a short distance from the cabin, maybe 30 yards. I ran to it, hood up, boots sliding in mud. I got the generator started, and it coughed and then settled into that steady hum. A sound that feels like control. Then I did the thing I shouldn't have done. I went for the backup camera, because I couldn't stand being blind. It was farther out, along the ridge trail. Maybe a 10-minute walk in good weather. In heavy rain, it was longer. Mud sucks at your boots. I told myself I was being smart. I told myself I needed the footage, needed to know what was happening. The truth is, I needed certainty, even if it killed me. I moved fast. I kept looking over my shoulder, and I hated myself for it. When I got to the tree where the backup camera was mounted, my breath was loud inside my hood. The camera was still there. For a second, I felt relief so strong it made me dizzy. Then I saw the strap. It was loose. Not torn, just loosened, like someone had tested it. Like fingers had worked at the buckle. I looked at the lens. Rain droplets. Nothing smeared. I popped the housing open and pulled the SD card with shaking hands. I shoved it into my pocket like it was gold. And then I ran back. I ran back through the rain with my lungs burning and mud splashing on my pants and my mind screaming one thought over and over. Please be inside. Please be inside. When the cabin came into view through the trees, my first thought was that something looked wrong. Not dramatic, not broken windows, not blood, just still. The porch light was on. The laundry line sagged, heavy with wet clothes, and something lay near the edge of the porch steps, dark against the mud. My brain refused to label it at first. That's how shock works. It keeps you safe for half a second by lying. Then I got closer. It was my daughter. She was on her side, rain hitting her hair, her jacket half open, one arm bent wrong. Her face turned toward the ground. I made a sound I didn't recognize as mine. I dropped to my knees so hard, my kneecaps hit rock under the mud, and pain flashed white. "Ayla," I said. "Ayla." I touched her shoulder, and her body was heavy and slack in a way that made my stomach flip. Her skin was cold in places already. Brain cold. I turned her face gently, like she was asleep. Her eyes were open just a little, not focused, not looking. I remember thinking, stupidly, that she looked surprised. I remember seeing the charm. It was placed near her hand. Not tangled, not broken. Set there, like someone put it down carefully. I sat back on my heels, rain running down my face, and I couldn't breathe. It felt like the air wouldn't go in. Then I heard it. A heavy movement in the trees. Not close, but not far. A shift. A wait. And then nothing. The woods went quiet again, even under the rain, in that way that makes your ears strain. I grabbed Ayla and dragged her toward the door. I don't know how I did it. Adrenaline. Panic. A father doing something that doesn't make sense because standing still is worse. Her boots scraped on the porch boards. Water pooled under her hair. I got her inside and slammed the door and locked it with shaking hands. Then I just stood there, holding her, like if I held her hard enough she'd come back. I kept saying her name, over and over. At some point my voice broke and turned into a sound that wasn't words. The rest of that day is pieces. I tried my phone. No service. I tried the landline. Dead. I tried the radio I keep for emergencies. Static. The power flickered again even with the generator. The storm was killing everything. I opened the door once and looked out, and the rain hit me like a wall, and I thought, if I go out there, I'm going to die too. And then I thought, good. Then I thought, no, I can't. Not yet. So I did what I've done my whole life. I went into procedure. I moved Ayla into the back room, onto the bed. I covered her with a blanket, not because she could feel it, because I couldn't stand seeing her wet. I checked the windows. I checked the locks. I kept the shotgun near me. I listened for anything outside. Every time the wind hit the cabin hard, I flinched like a kid. I didn't sleep. Not really. I sat in the chair and watched the dark window like it was a screen. At one point, in the middle of the night, I smelled something that didn't belong. A wet, musky stink, like dog and rot and something sharp underneath. Skunk, almost, but not exactly. It drifted past the cabin like a person walking by, and then it was gone. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I just sat there, holding the shotgun so tight my hands cramped, while my daughter lay dead in the next room. If you want to know what hell is, that's it. Not fire, not demons. Just being alive when you don't deserve it. The next day, the rain kept going, but it eased a little. Not as loud. The wind calmed. The creek still roared. I tried calling again. Nothing. I tried the radio again. I got a voice for half a second and then it cut. I could have tried to drive out. Maybe, but the road would have been a mess, and the thought of leaving Ayla alone in that cabin while whatever was out there knew the place, I couldn't. So I waited. I checked the porch from the window and saw that moss and bone bundle still sitting there like a message I couldn't read. And I avoided the SD card in my pocket like it was poison, because I knew what was on it. I didn't know the details, but I knew. If I watched it, there'd be no more, maybe, no more denial. No more pretending it was a bear, or a person, or an accident. It would be the thing I've been running from for years, staring back at me from a screen. Late that afternoon, the generator held steady. The lights stopped flickering. The storm finally started to move on. The silence after the rain was almost worse. I stood in the living room with the SD card in my hand, and my fingers shook so hard I almost dropped it. I have a laptop. Old, beat up. I use it for paperwork and maps and checking weather. It was on the table. I sat down. I inserted the card. The computer made a small click sound, and it was the loudest thing in the room. I opened the folder. There were clips, timestamps, short bursts of footage. My hands hovered over the mouse. I remember thinking, if I don't click it, then in some way I can still live in a world where I don't know. Then I thought of my daughter's face. So I clicked. The first clip showed the ridge trail and heavy rain. Trees, mud, nothing. Then a movement. Something stepped into frame at the edge, partly hidden by a trunk. Tall, dark, wet. Not blurry like the porch cam, clear enough. It stood there for a second, just there, like it knew the camera was there and didn't care. Then it moved closer, slow. And I swear to you, it wasn't walking like an animal. It had weight, deliberate weight. It placed its feet like it was used to the ground. It came close enough that the lens caught texture, wet hair clumped in strands, water running off its shoulders. A shape of a face, but not like a person's face. Broader, heavier. It leaned in, not sniffing like a bear, looking. Then it reached up with a hand and touched the camera housing. Fingers. Long, not claws. It didn't rip it off. It didn't break it. It just adjusted it, tilted it a little, like it wanted a better view of my cabin. I felt my blood drain out of my face. The next clip was later. You could tell because the light had changed, dimmer. The creature moved along the ridge, then disappeared. Then it came back carrying something. It stepped into frame and walked down toward where the cabin would be, out of sight. The next clip was from the porch camera. Somehow, that one had saved a file before it went black. I didn't know that until I saw it. The clip showed my porch in rain, the laundry line, the steps. Then the creature stepped into view, full. It was taller than the door frame. Its shoulders were wide. Its head sat low. Its arms hung longer than mine ever could. It didn't run. It didn't sneak. It walked right up to my porch like it had done it before. It set something down. That bundle, moss and bones. Right there. Then it stepped back and stood in the rain facing my door, waiting. Not like an animal waiting for food, like a person waiting for an answer. It stood there a long time. The clip ended, but I knew it stood longer because I remember that night, the way the woods felt. The next clip, I almost didn't click it. My hand froze. My stomach rolled. I clicked it anyway. Ayla came out onto the porch. My daughter, alive, holding a basket of wet laundry, moving like she was angry at me and focused on a task because tasks are easier than feelings. The charm was on her wrist. You could see it even through the rain because it was a dark shape against her skin. The creature was at the edge of the yard, near the tree-line gap. You could barely see it at first. Then you did, and here's the part that haunts me. It didn't charge. It didn't roar. It stopped. It stared at the charm. Then it lifted its head and stared at Ayla's face. And it tilted its head slightly, the way you do when you're trying to recognize someone. Then it looked past her at the cabin, like it recognized the cabin, like it remembered it. Ayla froze. You could see her body lock up. She held the basket like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Her mouth moved. She was saying something, but the trail cam doesn't record sound like that. Even if it did, the rain would have eaten it. She lifted her hands slowly, palms out. She took a step back. The creature stepped forward, not fast, not slow, certain. Ayla backed up again. Then, in a blink, it crossed the yard. One moment it was near the trees, the next it was right in front of her, too close for the camera to frame well. Her body jerked. The basket fell. Clothes hit the mud. And then, it was over. I'm not going to describe every part. I can't. And she deserves better than that. I'll tell you what matters. It wasn't feeding. It wasn't thrashing. It was a fast, brutal act, like a decision carried out. Ayla went down. The creature bent, lifted something, dragged her a short distance toward the tree line, not far, then stopped. Then it placed the charm near her. You could see the hand move. Gentle, almost. It set it down like a judge putting down a gavel. Then it turned and walked back into the trees, not running, not panicked, just leaving, as if the message had been delivered. I sat there at my table with the laptop open and my hands numb, and I made a sound like an animal. Then I slammed the laptop shut and I pressed my forehead to the table and I cried so hard my chest hurt. And then, because pain loves company, the past came up, not slowly, not like a memory, like a door kicked open. You want to know what happened to my wife? I'll tell you, but you're not going to like me. Years ago, before Ayla was old enough to understand, Mary and I were still trying to make the cabin feel like a home. I was still working. I was gone a lot. Mary would take Ayla into town, do the normal stuff, but she also loved the woods in a way I didn't. I loved the woods like a job, like a place you manage. Mary loved it like it was alive. She'd walk trails just to see how the moss grew. She'd bring home little ferns in a pot like they were pets. She'd talk about how the forest felt older in some places. I'd roll my eyes and say, "It's just trees." She'd smile and say, "You don't listen." One afternoon in late fall, Mary went for a walk without me. Ayla was with a neighbor kid in town. Mary wanted quiet. She took a thermos of tea in her scarf, the patterned one. She didn't come back at the time she said she would. That's not unusual. People lose track of time. But after dark, when she still wasn't back, I felt that cold drop in my stomach. I went out with a flashlight and called her name. I walked the trails around the cabin. I checked the creek. I checked the places she liked. Nothing. Then I found her thermos. Lying on its side near a ravine, lid open, tea spilled into the mud. I remember my heart hammering so hard it felt like it was trying to climb out. I followed the ground like I'd been trained to do. Prints, disturbed leaves, broken branches. And then I saw something I didn't have a label for. Small footprints, but not deer, not human. Too wide, too long. They led toward the ravine. I moved down carefully, sliding on wet leaves, grabbing roots for balance. At the bottom, under a big cedar, I heard a sound. A low whimper. Not a dog, not a person. Something in between. I swung my light, and there it was. A juvenile. That's the only word that fits. Smaller than an adult, but not small like a baby. It was crouched in a pocket of ferns, hunched over, holding its side. At first my brain tried to say bear. That was a safe word, but the shape was wrong. The posture, the hands, the face. It looked at me and I felt my body go cold. Then another sound. "Mary." "Don't," she whispered from behind a fallen log. I spun and saw her crouched there, muddy, breathing hard, her hands out like she was calming a skittish horse. Her eyes were wide, but not with fear the way mine were, with focus. "What are you doing?" I hissed. She glanced at me and her jaw tightened. "It's hurt," she said. I stared at her like she'd lost it. "You need to get away from it," I said. "It's not attacking," she said, still holding her hands out. "It's scared." I looked back at the creature. It was breathing hard, shoulders rising and falling. Its hair was matted with blood on one side. There was a wound, a torn patch, like something had cut it deep. Hunters. That was my first thought. The kind that shoot at shapes in brush. The kind that don't report. The kind I'd arrested before. Mary whispered. It came toward the creek and fell. It couldn't get up. I said, "Mary, you don't know what it is." She said, "I know it's alive." And she reached into her pocket and pulled out a strip of cloth, her scarf. She moved slowly, inch by inch, and laid the cloth near it. The creature stared at it, then at her, then at me. I felt something in my chest I didn't like, a weird shame. Like my wife had more courage than me, Mary murmured sounds, soft, not words, just tone. The creature's breathing slowed a little. Mary looked at me without turning her head. "Please," she whispered. "Don't do anything. Just let me." I was a wildlife officer. I had dealt with bears, cougars, wolves. I knew what danger looked like. This was danger, but it was also something else. The creature shifted and winced, and Mary flinched like she felt it. She pointed toward the wound. There was metal glinting in it, not a bullet. Something else, like a broadhead, an arrowhead maybe, or a fragment. Hunters had tried to kill it. Mary said, "We can help it." "We?" I snapped. She ignored my tone. "If it can move, it'll leave. That's all it wants. It's stuck." I should have stopped her. I should have pulled her away. Instead, I stood there in the wet ravine with my flashlight shaking and watched my wife do something I still don't fully understand. She helped it. She didn't touch it at first. She didn't grab it. She used a stick, a piece of cloth, slow movements. She got close enough to see the wound better. The creature watched her like it was reading her. At some point, it reached toward her. Not fast. It extended a hand, palm down, and touched her forearm lightly. Mary froze, eyes wide. Then she didn't pull away. She just breathed. I remember thinking, Mary, what are you doing? The creature withdrew, then reached behind itself and pulled something from a little pouch of woven fibers. It was crude, but real. It held it out. Mary hesitated. Then she took it. That was the charm. Braided plant fiber, strips of old leather, knots that didn't look human. A little hard piece tied in. Mary held it like it was sacred. I stared at it, not understanding. Mary whispered, "It's giving me something." I wanted to tell her she was crazy. I wanted to tell her to throw it away, but the creature sat back like it had done what it needed to do. And then, through the trees above us, we heard another sound. A deep, heavy exhale. A low vocalization that wasn't a bear. Mary's head snapped up. The juvenile's body tensed, and it made a soft sound like a child. And then the world changed. Branches cracked above. The ground seemed to vibrate. Something big moved through brush fast enough to make ferns whip. The mother arrived. That's what it was. I know it. Not because I want to humanize it, because the behavior was pure protective rage. It came down into the ravine like a freight train. Tall, massive, wet hair hanging in ropes, shoulders like a boulder. It saw the juvenile. Then it saw Mary holding the charm. And it misread everything. In that second, Mary wasn't a rescuer. She was a threat. The mother lunged. Mary screamed. Not long. Just one sharp sound. I moved. I don't even remember deciding. My body moved on instinct, training, adrenaline. I yelled. I fired a warning shot into the air. The sound in the ravine was deafening. The mother didn't flinch. It grabbed Mary. I saw Mary's body jerk in its grip. I saw her scarf whip through the air. I saw mud spray. And then it threw her, not like tossing prey, like tossing a threat away from the juvenile. Mary hit the ground hard. Her head struck something. Rock, maybe. I don't know. I just know the sound. I screamed her name. The mother turned back toward the juvenile like that was all that mattered. It crouched over it, shielding it, making this low, rumbling sound. Mary was on the ground, gasping. I crawled to her. I grabbed her shoulders. Her eyes were open, but unfocused. Blood ran from her scalp into the mud. "Harris," she whispered, and her voice was thin. "It's okay," I lied. "It's okay. I'm here." She grabbed my sleeve with shaking fingers. "Go," she whispered. "Get help." I looked back at the mother. It was still crouched over the juvenile, but it was watching me now. Watching the way an animal watches when it's deciding if you're still a threat. I should have picked Mary up and run. I should have carried her to the cabin. But I saw the mother's eyes, and I saw the juvenile's eyes, and something in me broke. Not with fear, with rage. Because in my mind, in that moment, it wasn't an unknown creature acting on instinct. It was something that just hurt my wife. I pulled my gun up. Mary whispered again, "Don't." I didn't listen. I fired. The mother turned, fast. It moved like muscle and reflex. It was on me before my brain could process it, but the bullet hit. I saw the impact. It staggered. It didn't fall right away. It made a sound I still hear in my sleep. Not a roar, something lower. Like air forced out of a huge chest, like pain and anger together. The juvenile screamed. Yes, screamed, like a child. It scrambled toward the mother, trying to climb onto it, trying to pull it away from me. I fired again. The mother dropped to one knee. Mary was behind me, crawling, trying to get away. I should have stopped. I should have realized what I was doing. But rage narrows your world. It turns everything into a target. I fired a third time. The mother fell. The juvenile clung to it, making that high, broken sound, rocking like it couldn't accept it. And then it looked at me. I can't describe the look in a way that does it justice without making it sound like a story. It wasn't evil. It wasn't animal. It was recognition, like it was carving my face into its memory. Then it reached for the charm. Mary had dropped it when she was attacked. It lay in the mud near her scarf. The juvenile grabbed it and pressed it to the mother's body like it was trying to give it back life. Then it snatched it up and backed away into the ferns, still making those sounds. And then it was gone. Just like that, into trees that swallowed it. I stood there shaking, gun in my hands, rain hitting my face, my wife bleeding behind me, and I felt something like victory for half a second. Then Mary made a sound. A wet, choked sound, and reality slammed back in. I turned and crawled to her. Her skin was pale. Her lips were blue around the edges. She was losing heat fast. Her eyes found mine. "Harris," she whispered, and there was something in her voice I'd never heard before. Not fear of the creature, fear of me. "Get help," she said again. I nodded. "I will." But here's where the confession part gets ugly. I didn't run right away. I looked at the mother's body, the proof sitting there like a miracle, and my brain did something sick. It thought, nobody will believe me. It thought, if I report this, they'll take it. They'll make it disappear. They'll call me crazy. It thought, I need something. I need proof. I need control. So I did the worst thing. I delayed. I left Mary there, bleeding and cold, while I did something for myself. I took photos. I took measurements. I cut a piece of hair. I did it fast, but not fast enough. Mary lay there in the rain and whispered my name, and I told her, "Just a second, just hold on." And she did, because she trusted me. Then I dragged her toward the cabin. I got her inside. I tried to stop the bleeding. I wrapped her in blankets. I built the stove up high. But she was already too far gone. We were too remote. The roads were bad. The rain was cold. Her injuries were deep. Exposure matters more than people think. And I had wasted time. Mary died on my cabin floor while I held her hand and told her I was sorry. She didn't say anything at the end. She just looked at me like she was trying to decide if she hated me. Then her eyes unfocused and she was gone. I sat there with blood on my hands and rain still falling outside, and I realized something else. If I told the truth, I would go to prison, or a mental hospital, or both. If I told the truth, Ayla would grow up with a mother's death that would turn her into a headline. If I told the truth, they would come for the body. They would come for everything. So I did what cowards do. I filed it as an animal attack. I used the safe words: accident, bear, tragic, and people accepted it because that's what people want. They want the label that lets them sleep. I buried the rest. I kept the charm that Mary had held, the one I found later, the one the juvenile had dropped in the chaos when it fled. I kept it like proof, like a trophy, like a curse. And I put up cameras because after that I couldn't stop feeling watched, not by the world, by the forest. Years went by. Ayla grew up with half a story, with a father who flinched at certain sounds, with a cabin that felt like a wound that never scabbed. I told myself I was protecting her. I told myself silence was mercy. But silence isn't mercy. Silence is just another kind of selfishness. It keeps you comfortable while everyone else pays the price. And the thing I never wanted to admit, not even to myself, was this. I knew it would come back, not right away, because I had killed its mother, in front of it. And I had kept what wasn't mine. That's why I watched the tree line. That's why I put up cameras. That's why I lived like a man waiting for a knock at the door. Not because I thought it would stalk me for sport, because I thought it would come for debt. When Ayla brought that charm outside, she didn't just break a rule, she lit a flare. To that creature, the charm wasn't a weird object from a tote. It was a bond token, a marker, a memory. It saw it on her wrist, and it didn't see a random girl. It saw the man who killed its mother, wearing the last thing tied to that day on the body of a child who shared his face. And it did to me what it believed I had done to it. It took my mother away. That's the sick symmetry of it. People ask me, why didn't it kill you? It could have. It didn't. It killed my daughter and left me alive to find her. That is not animal behavior. That is punishment. When the storm finally cleared enough for someone to get to my cabin, it was a neighbor first. A logger who checks on me sometimes because he knows I don't talk to anyone. He drove as far as he could, then walked. When he came in and saw me sitting there, he flinched like he'd stepped into a crime scene. Because he had. He tried to talk. I didn't answer. He called it in. The deputy came hours later, tires throwing mud, face tight. They asked questions. I answered in fragments. They tried to make it make sense. They talked about bears. They talked about a person. They talked about an accident. I didn't correct them. Not at first. Because even then, with my daughter dead, my first instinct was still to control the story. That's who I am. That's what I hate most about myself. But then the deputy found the broken camera mount. The gouges in the bark, the handprint smear on the doorframe where muddy fingers had dragged. He stared at it a long time without speaking. He looked at me and said, "What did this?" I opened my mouth, and for the first time in years, I told the truth. Not all of it, not the full ugliness right away, but enough. I said, "It wasn't a bear." His face tightened. He said, "What are you saying?" I swallowed. I said, "I'm saying there's something out there and it remembers me." He stared at me like I was insane. Maybe I was, maybe I still am. Later, when I was alone again, after they took Ayla away in a bag that zipped shut, after the cabin went quiet in a different way, I walked out onto the porch. The rain had stopped. The air was cold and clean. The forest smelled sharp, like wet cedar and earth. The moss and bone bundle was gone. I stood there barefoot like a fool, staring at the tree-line gap. And I waited. Not because I wanted it to come back. Because part of me did. Because some part of me thinks the only honest ending is for the debt to finish. But nothing came. No roar. No movement, no sound. Just a drip of water from the eaves, slow and steady, like a clock. I looked down at the porch rail, and there, in the wet wood, was a mark. Not a scratch like an animal, not random. A pressed, damp imprint, like a hand had rested there for a moment. 5 long finger shapes, slightly smeared where rain had started to wash them. It was the last thing it left me. Not a message I could show anyone and have them nod and say, "Yes, that makes sense." Just a reminder. I still live out there sometimes, not all year. I can't. The cabin feels like a throat closing. But when I do, I still catch myself watching the tree line. And every once in a while, late at night when the wind shifts, I smell that musky stink again. Just a hint of it, like something passed nearby and kept going. And I don't move. I sit very still. Because I know, deep down, that the forest doesn't forget. And I know I taught it my face.